Usually there's not a lot going on in the garden this time of year, but it seems that that freeze has tricked everything into thinking that it's spring now that it's in the 60s and 70s. And here we have my cilantro plants. These I seeded in here over a year ago, so these have just seeded themselves from seeds that fell off of last season's plants, which is really cool. That's the cool thing about planting kind of a perennial style garden, is that things just take care of themselves over time. So I'm really excited about that. I'm still a little nervous that another freeze will come because we're so early into winter, but we'll see what happens. And this is my German thyme. It looks amazing. I can't believe how strong it is after all of this cold weather. It's actually larger than it ever has been before. I did trim it back before the freeze came, just to harvest some of it, but it has just popped back up and it is looking amazing. It has spread out a lot, but for the most part, this German thyme plant, it's really compact, which I like about it. I think it would be really cute in a rock garden, and this is just my large wooden garden bed, but it looks amazing. And when they flower, it's absolutely gorgeous. I cannot wait until it flowers again to show you how the clusters look. I've taken pictures of them before and posted them on Instagram, but it really does look unreal. Just, they're really cool looking spiral flowers. And here's my bee balm. This is in the mint family, so it kind of looks like our chocolate mint, except for most of our chocolate mint looks like it died during the freeze. And it is coming back though. If you don't know, mint has a bad habit of spreading, and chocolate mint is no different. It has taken over this bed and basically mulched it. But this bee balm, also known as wild bergamot, produces beautiful purple flowers, and it's already starting to mound back up and come back to life. All of this tall dead area is where it shot up. It shoots up pretty tall. This one got over 4.5 to 5 feet tall, which is pretty insane. And the flowers are amazing in tea, and also the leaves make amazing tea. So it's really cool to have. It has more of a subtle flavor, but it's a little spicier than regular mint. It's not really minty. It kind of tastes like oregano in tea. It's different, but it's great for tummy aches, colds, flus. Look at this. All of these turnips, and they are popping up and growing like crazy. There's the turnip root forming. All of these tops right here that you see, they can actually be harvested and eaten. So all of this is food for now, and the roots are really food for later, which is pretty cool. When you're harvesting turnip greens, you really want to make sure that you leave enough on there for added growth, but turnips are pretty resilient crops. And so you can use scissors or whatever you have, but really you can just pinch these off with your nails. Now, some turnips, after they get a certain size, they do get a little spiky on the tops, and so you can just cook them. You can see the kind of spikes at the top. You can cook them and that'll go away. And the cool thing about root vegetables after they experienced a freeze like ours did is that they're a lot sweeter. So if you don't like that strong earthy flavor, this is a good time to harvest them. And so this is just a ton of food. A lot of people know to eat turnip greens, but when it comes to radishes and other crops, or even carrots, people don't always know that those are edible. Now, a carrot has an extremely strong taste that I kind of compare to cilantro, so it's best to use small amounts of the tops at a time. But I love cooking with it. I think it's an amazing way to use all the greens. They're rich in vitamin A, and they're just really filling. Look at that. That's just what I've handpicked in this short period of time. There's still plenty more. Plus, if you don't know, they're growing all in the duck coop along with some collard greens that withstand the freeze and that are currently withstanding our geese. So they're great resilient crops, but that right there is enough for a small meal and I could easily harvest more, and then the leaves are just gonna come back. And it's really cool is if you harvest the largest leaves first, like say this leave's larger than the rest, it gives kind of room for everything else to grow, but it also prevents the leaves from dying and attracting slugs or any other pest, even snails, that might feed on the decaying matter of plants. So the cool thing about turnips is you can mostly store them in the ground. Now, where we're at in Texas, it does get kind of hot and wet at the same time, and so that's not good for storing turnips. So I do have to pull them out of the ground over winter. But if you're in an area where that's not an issue, where it's not rainy and humid at the same time, then you can store your turnips in the ground fairly easily over the winter, and it saves you from having to store them or anything else. But also it's a great crop. Like I said, we had a pretty hard freeze for at least a week, and that's unusual for this area. So it's kind of nice to see everything bouncing back up and how resilient they are and not having to worry. The freeze was bad enough that it killed off all of my peas, and peas are supposed to be known for being frost resistant. Alright, so that's pretty much enough for my family, and we are a family of 6. So you can see how easily kind of getting rid of that larger plant matter is, but also using it and eating it. It's really awesome. Look at all these just popping up. So I'm sure you've seen these little penguins on some of my videos, but I really love them. My brother-in-law, his grandmother actually painted them for our family, which was really cool. She's very talented, so we're always excited to get all of her beautiful yard work. Look at this popping up. That actually looks like a holly tree, possibly. I'm not sure. I've not seen this plant in my garden before. This is new to me. So I'm a little nervous because I do have some allergies to certain trees. I've actually been known to break out pretty severely when trimming back some of the trees in my yard, so I might have to pull that up and either move it somewhere else or take it out completely. All of these onions, they have basically just popped up on their own. They're actually chives, and look at that. Can you see it? It's a little blurry. It's actually a close blossom starting to form on the plant, which is really cool. So these chives sowed themselves. They just kind of pop up randomly. You can see some more just kind of starting to show up throughout the ground. And that's because over here in this little garden, they are planted, and you can see several of them kind of popping up right here. These are all, this is my son's garden. He planted these, and they're just an organic, organic onion chives that we got from HEB, and we've been growing these since last March, and they just keep on growing and taking over. And when he built his bed, he planted them in here. And look how well they're doing. Onions, chives, shallots, anything from that family is just such a good cool weather crop for us in our zone, and we're in zone 9A. It just withstands so much. The cold, the heat. The only issue is that we need a lot more because we cannot grow them fast enough. And you can kind of see the difference. Here's some of the younger leaves, and look how thick these are compared to them. It's a pretty big difference. They're over a foot in height, which is pretty cool. You can see where the thinner leaves are from where my son comes out and he chops these down. He loves them on sandwiches. And this is some marjoram that's kind of popping back up there. And you can see the mound is also an organic plant from HEB. And then these are the seeds where you can, if you shake them out, actually little black seeds will come out. And this is our sweet basil. It did not fare well during the cold. As you know, freeze kills basil. There are little black seeds inside of these, and if you shake them out, they will come out, which is really cool. So, oh, here's some. You can actually see the seeds because the brown is dyed back. Get those little black seeds in there. It's kind of hard to do with one hand. Look. Oh man, the seeds smell so amazing. All I can smell is sweet basil right now. Oops. This is variegated organic lemon thyme. I'm just gonna shove that in there so I can find it next time. And look how pretty those flowers are. Such pretty color to this whole plant. Let me see if it actually smells like. Oh yeah, it does have a more like a lemon pill smell. I guess if you wanted the zest of a lemon inside of your cooking, this would be a really, really good plant to have. Look, even my tea rose bush is popping back up, thinking it's time to blossom again. They actually have some pods. So on the rose hips, you can actually harvest the roses, or you can harvest these rose hips, which are the dried bud of the roses after the rose tides. But inside of this rose hip, look at that, is another rose bush seed. So these can be propagated by cuttings or by the seed. Isn't that pretty? Look how pretty this bush is. This has some really pretty orangish pink flowers. It's actually one of the first plants I planted in this garden, and it is the logo for our homestead. So that logo that you're seeing at the top is this really pretty rose bush, and it really blossoms when it takes off. Our carrots popping up. I just surface sowed these, and after the freeze they just started popping up everywhere. It's really easy. Now, carrots are biennials. Carrots are biennials, so they don't produce seed until their second year of growth. And down here, carrots don't seem to fare well after just 6 months because it gets so hot. I found that the new Carota carrot is the best carrot that we could grow. And here's one that's starting to kind of grow here. You can tell by the size of the top that this is actually a fairly young carrot still, so I'm not going to pick it up. But I did not sow new Carota carrots this season. These are what's re-sowed themselves over the last couple of seasons. Now, here our carrots can kind of be tricked because the weather goes from really hot to really cold several times super fast, then they get confused and think it's time to send up seeds. Here's actually one, it looks like, that doesn't have a top, and you can see how the roots have kind of, I guess this was part of one that I tried to pull and it didn't come out. So this is a really small carrot still, but these are definitely not ready. But look how rich the soil is. This was all formed by laying down mushroom compost on top and allowing it to break down. And I will warn you that mushroom compost can be high in salt, so when composting, that's something to look out for. But the reason that I planted carrots was this wasn't rich at first. If you know, rich soil can cause your carrots to fork out, which they're still edible. They're just not pretty and not really good for canning. But I'm so proud of this. And when you first lay the mushroom compost down, it has a lot of wood in it. So you want to dig below the surface to plant your plants in. And then you can surface sow whatever you want. Because at that point, it's going to be poor soil on top, poor compost. But when it breaks down like this has over the year, as you can see, it creates some really beautiful soil, and I think that's a really great option. So here's my rosemary plant. I'm pretty sure it's dead. The freeze did away with that. This is a Mediterranean plant, so it's used to like dry, warm climates, and it did not fare well. So I haven't decided. I thought maybe trying to harvest some of this that's dried on it. So really, you're just going to clip it back. And it actually looks like it has some green to it. Down here, right on the stem there. So maybe there's still something left to it. I do not know. My rosemary's never turned this color before because it's never been through a freeze. But it was so beautiful and green before the freeze. So it's definitely going to be a plant. This is all the growth from 1 year. So this will definitely be a plant that I continue to grow here, regardless of freezes or anything else. Okay, look at this. So this is my fennel plant. You can kind of see the seeds here. This is a bulbing fennel. It's Florence fennel. And this is actually, it looks like this one finally died. I didn't grow this as an annual. I've been growing it as a perennial, and I've managed to harvest multiple bulbs off of this. Not just the one or two that I expected, but I noticed that bulbs just kept shooting up over every season, which was pretty incredible. Now, it definitely looks like it's had its time, so I'm just going to clip it down to the soil, but I'll leave the roots in. And here is another one that I planted shortly after I planted that one. And you can kind of see the seeds on it. They have dried. So all of these seeds can be harvested and used for spices, or obviously they could be replanted. But my favorite way to propagate fennel is really just by the bulbs that it produces. You can actually just take a bulb of this fennel and propagate it. Make sure there's a little root, and then just plant it in the ground. It's really that simple. Fennel is such a great, easy plant to grow. Now what I'm doing now is I'm actually just cutting off all of the dead wood, because all of this is just seed stock. The fennel has started coming back up after the freeze down at the bulb again. And you can see the bulbs kind of forming down there. And it looks like there's several of them. 1, 2, 3 that I see, plus some more green shooting up. 4. So what you can do is you could leave these here, or you can separate them. It doesn't matter. All of these stems, when they're young or old, are edible, but they're really nice right now and great for tea. The fern is usable. I like to cut up all of the stalk and boil it in water, and not necessarily in water, but in a sugar syrup. That kind of preserves the flavor. If you just boil fennel in water, it tends to lose that licorice flavor. But if you put it in a sugar syrup and cook it, wait till the sugar syrup gets hot and then put this in there, it creates almost like a licorice candy that I like to dehydrate. It's really good. I was worried about the extreme licorice flavor because my family does not like licorice, but whenever I started cooking it, I realized that, oh no, man, look at that. My hand is covered in ants. It looks like there's an ant bed right here by my fennel plant that I did not see at all. See, the ants are trying to sting my clippers here. And I guess I set my clippers, ended up setting my clippers right inside of that ant bed. You'll have to excuse my fingers getting into the shot so much, but yeah, I was trying to get the ants off my hands. Definitely not fun. So I'm just clipping all of this wood down and trying to avoid that ant bed altogether. Until that I was kind of in the zone. So here's a pretty good pile of all of the ferns just from that one plant. And here are all of the seeds again. So all of these can just be pulled off and harvested and used to season food, which is what I'll do. Look at that. How beautiful is that? That it gives so much that even after a freeze, you can still harvest off of these. Okay, so I went ahead and turned off the camera and cleaned out a lot of the dead wood because I did not want to stick my hand in an ant pile. But you can see there's actually a lot more sprouts coming up than I thought. Look at that. There's so much. And I'll show you what I meant by how easy it is to propagate. Look at this. So I'm just going to reach down here under the soil. There's actually a pretty in-depth root system. So here it goes. This has a little bit of root right here on the end of the bulb. Nice little fennel. Now this fennel isn't fully bulbed yet. That's just a little bit. So I'm going to just dig a hole right down here. I want to make sure to get under the mushroom compost into the soil. And then I'm going to put the fennel down and then just bury the whole bulb all the way up to the leaves, which also are called ferns. And this allows that whole fennel that's underneath there to bulb out. It also gets it away from the rest of the fennel so that it has time to grow bigger and stronger, because when all the bulbs are growing together, sometimes you get slightly smaller bulbs. So if you break it down up like this, you can actually get several bulbs, and this will form an entire new plant. So you can see just how easy fennel is to propagate. You can grow this to have one bulbs, but with us being a warm climate, I'm gonna just let it grow into a bulb. I'm gonna let it grow into a bulb. I'm going to propagate it, this one of the extra bulbs, and keep producing new plants. So this is a good example. Look, there's that ant pile. You can see the close proximity to everything and how I ended up putting my shears right into it. So here's kind of the system. This is where the old growth was and the new bulbs are shooting up from, right there. So it's fairly easy to get a piece of root off of these. There's a lot going on down here. A lot of this is buried. Look at that. How much is under there? I'm definitely gonna have to take some time and create a bunch of new plants. This is pretty insane. So if you're new to gardening, like I was, and you're wondering if you can propagate the bulbs of fennel or if they will grow as a perennial and not just an annual, here is your sign that you absolutely can, and that they will do amazing, and you will end up with tons of fennel bulbs if you're in a warm climate, just like I have. And look at that. Now, this is not the fennel that's grown for seed. These are grown from the bulbs. You just happen to get seed as a byproduct, which is fairly nice. I'm so impressed with the soil. The first year, there's not a ton of growth compared to the years that come after that, but still, I mean, we created this. It's amazing. And if you actually look back, you can see that we got plenty of food out of here during the first year, but nothing like this. I mean, I'm really impressed. The soil was not like this at all. I know I probably sound super repetitive saying that. I can't emphasize the importance of it enough. It really is. There's another one. You see the little root there. So there's a lot that this plant has to offer, and it's growing under a tree. These are tallow trees. They grow everywhere here. They produce little green bulbs of seed that eventually turn black. It's a great food source for local birds and everything else. And so I just made sure when I was making this bed to not push it too high up around the trunk of the tree. You can see what I mean by all of the parts of the mushroom compost that hasn't broken down all that wood, but underneath here it has. So I just made sure not to push it up over the trunk of the trees, and everything seems to be doing really well. You know, there are so many things that you can grow in a shallow garden bed. And I mean, it's January here, so to kind of give you an example of what you can expect to grow and propagate during this time of year. I'm pretty excited about all of this. Now, there is one plant that looks like it didn't fare too well, and that is my spicy Italian oregano. See some seed pods for it up here, but yeah, I don't know, it may come back. It may be done for. That freeze may have been too much for it. So I'm just gonna gather the rest of these. Here's the bigger plant that is definitely gone. So I'm excited to harvest all of these seeds off of this plant. Look at this. This is my crabapple tree, and it is confused by the sudden warming of temperatures after freeze too. And it's decided that it is the perfect time to start sending out leaves. And here up here, see if I can, there it goes, a little bud forming on the tree. A couple of them, they're a little blurry, but they are there. I am pretty excited to see this. All of these buds forming. So that's crazy. I don't know if we're gonna end up with a early spring or a late winter here. And here's a pretty good example of all the ant piles that are just popping up everywhere because of this intense rain that we've had. So I want to emphasize this, is that we are not currently growing with row covers. So what you see, another ant bed, is us growing without any freeze protection whatsoever. Are we going to invest in row covers? Absolutely, but it wasn't in the budget right away, and I still wanted to grow food. So you can grow all of this fairly cheap, especially these turnips. I mean, you're talking a couple of dollars for hundreds of seeds, and with things like the organic Florence fennel, I paid a little more. I paid $4 a plant for that, but it produced all through last year, and it gave me not one, but 7 or 8 bulbs, and then there were 2 of those, so for $10, and one of the plants is still producing right now. So for me, you don't have to spend a lot of money to get these results. A lot of these will grow in the ground. Turnips will grow in clay soil. It may not be the best quality turnip, but it's still food, and it's still going to give you a harvest for your family. Look at that. So this is my other bed that has turnips in it. And again, this is just growing under the blackberry. So it's not even taking up its own bed. It's just something that I sowed underneath a plant that was already growing in the garden. So I didn't have to make an extra bed or extra space. I just used up the space that wasn't being used by the berries. And you can see, look at that. They're producing a lot of leaves right now. And look at this. This is my other pile of turnips that I'm getting just the harvest of leaves off of. So I hope this video kind of shows you the options you have right now in 9A without any freeze protection whatsoever. And look at this. Strawberries. These are also last year's plant. And now we have 3 berry plants, which I'm pretty, 3 berry flowers, which I'm pretty excited about. This one's already forming a little berry. Isn't that amazing? The things you can grow right now without row crops is pretty intense. All of this went through a freeze. All of it's still growing. It's just amazing what you can do for a small amount of money. So I don't want you to think that gardening has to be crazy expensive when you're first starting out. Do things cheaply, make your mistakes, learn what you're doing, and then worry about investing more money over time. Our garden has taken a long time to build. We've lived in this house for 7 years. It's not something that I just came out and did all in 1 year. I mean, 7 years is a long time for us to finally be able to afford to get out here and make these beds. So I hope that gives you kind of some hope where you know that you have time to do these things and get a good crop. Here's just one bunch. So between this and the bed that I harvested earlier, that's gonna give me 2 mills, and these are not even full-size plants. These are just extra leaves off the tops that are gonna start dying back if they're not picked. I still have another, 5 weeks minimum until these turnips are ready for harvest because they're still pretty small. So that's gonna produce a lot of greens during that time.